All right, guys, welcome back. Josh Beatar and Alex Goldman here for From the Stands, and today we are joined by a man who is a very important figure in the world of mixed martial arts, and will be very well known very soon. He is the matchmaker for the PFL MENA, the Middle East North Africa branch. Gustavo Firmino, mate, thank you so much for the time this afternoon. We really appreciate it. How has your day been so far?
No, thank you guys for yeah, pleasure here speaking with you guys. And yeah, the day has been great. I trained MMA, a little bit old, but I still try to to hang in there with the boys. And now I'm getting ready to start working.
Awesome, man. Well, Gustavo, I want to touch firstly on the PFL Middle East and North Africa branch. And, myself, I have Lebanese heritage. So for me, seeing the Middle East and North Africa sub-circuit is very cool. And I love that. One thing I love that the PFL does is that you guys are really trying to develop and promote these regions, Europe and the Middle East and North Africa. Australia's in the pipeline. These things are really good for mixed martial arts. And I guess how big do you think that's going to be in developing fighters in the Middle East and Africa?
Right. And I think it's this is all part of the strategy of PFL to create the Champions League of MMA. So obviously last year we started with the European League that now it's on the second year. So this year we started with the PFL MENA, so Middle East and North Africa. So it's still in the roadmap. We have Asia, Latin America. So it's very exciting to think about the division, and when we have all these regional leagues, obviously scouting, developing new talent to create regional stars and to develop them into becoming global stars and joining the global PFL league. So it's I personally love the format. I'm a MMA fan first and foremost. So I was a fan of PFL way before joining. And the Middle East specifically, I lived in the Middle East for about 4 years. So I used to work for another MMA organization. So very familiar with the fighters, the gyms, and the talent in the region. So I think what PFL brings is different from all the other organizations, and I think that what PFL is doing with this platform is really enabling the fighters really to test themselves, who are the best in the regions, and to develop them into bigger stars in the region to later on join the global league.
Definitely. So Gustavo, you mentioned at the top of the show, train some MMA today, and you're also a jiu-jitsu brown belt. And, we're talking about PFL MENA, which, obviously is huge for combat sports, but we also got a bit of drama in the jiu-jitsu world at the moment with ADCC and the Craig Jones Invitational. So I was just curious if I could get your thoughts sort of on that drama that's unfolding. Do you think the Craig Jones Invitational is a good thing for the growth of jiu-jitsu, or do you think it would have been better for ADCC to kind of keep building its brand and its name?
That's a very interesting question. I think every time I get my phone and I open Instagram, I go to Craig Jones
Yeah.
account if there is anything new about that.
Yeah.
So I've been following. I think in any sport, in MMA and also obviously in Jiu-Jitsu, the more options the fighters have, I think competition is always good. That levels up everyone involved, right? So I think in that perspective, it's great for the athletes. They have a choice. It's what he's proposing is a bit different. Obviously, ADCC has its name, its value, has been recognized as the Olympics of grappling. Obviously, I've been watching. I cannot wait for the next ADCC as well. I have. There are many athletes there that have been following. Some of them I know personally, but what he's bringing on the table is quite different. Not only on what the financials and the way, obviously he has the $1 million for the champion, but the rules are different as well.
Yeah.
So he's bringing a format that first of all it's going to be on the same format of karate combat, right? Which is interesting. And he has a format which there will be, I think, 3 rounds, and the scoring is going to be a 10-must system like MMA. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. I personally don't like grappling with rounds.
Yeah, I agree.
I like to watch, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or whatever the case may be, but I like to watch it continuously. I watched one of his interviews, and he mentioned that I think in the end of the round they would restart on the same position it was before, which would make sense. But at the same time, I don't know. We need to see how it's going to play out. But I think what he's trying to create something new, and I truly admire that. So I'm sure he has some very smart people around him to help him organize. So I'm very curious to see how it plays out.
What's up, guys? It's Josh here from the stands. And look, I know you're in the middle of a good little interview that we're currently doing, but I want to take a second of your time just to give a quick little shout out to today's sponsor, TrainAid. Obviously, they're big supporters of us, like we are of them. And today they're sponsoring this video. And look, I want to let you guys know about a little product they do, their premium product, TrainAid Hydration. It's the best hydration formula on the market, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. And look, if you don't believe me, ask guys like Israel Adesanya, Alexander Volkanovski, Leon Edwards. You ever heard of these guys? I mean, they're the top athletes in the world. And they're all taking TrainAid Hydration. It really is the #1 formula in the world for hydration. And in the summer months here in Australia, I mean, it's something that I think everyone should be taking. And TrainAid have been very nice to give us a discount code, a very healthy discount code as well. I mean, it's a nice little discount code. If you use the code FTS15 at the checkout, they will give you 15% off. We'll leave a link to their website in this description of this video. And yeah, check them out, guys. Please support them because they are supporting us. Cheers.
Absolutely. Gustavo, one thing I've sort of thought about recently, and now that the Middle East and more so Saudi Arabia and Turkey Al Sheikh is bringing these big events, boxing and MMA, to the region. And one thing that a lot of people have noticed is that sometimes the fans aren't always as vocal as they are in other places. But in my opinion, what I think the PFL MENA is going to do is it gives the local audience, the people that will be in the Middle East and North Africa, a chance to root for their fighters, to support their fighters, and to have that voice and to cheer for them. Would you agree with that the PFL MENA is actually going to increase the amount of fans in the region as well?
I think, yeah, definitely. And a good example of that is we have a fighter. Her name is Hatan Al Saif. And she's a decorated Muay Thai champion in the region multiple times, Muay Thai world champion, Arab champion, Saudi champion, and she did her first MMA fight, amateur MMA fight, in the last PFL MENA 1 in May. And the crowd went crazy when she walked to the cage, and obviously she won with a devastating head kick KO, and she became already a star. Before that fight, actually, just taking a step back, when she was announced that she got signed by PFL, that was the first Saudi female fighter signed with a major organization. I remember I met her in February when we had the PFL versus Bellator event, and just walking with her through the hotel, other Arab women that everyone recognized her, they would ask her to take a photo, etc. So they were just so proud to have another Saudi representing them on the highest level of the sport. So obviously with this win, she's already a star. She was covered in all mainstream media in the region, including Vogue and etc. So, and I think that will also help to create and to grow the fan base for MMA. Obviously, we have Abdullah Al-Qahtani, who is a star. He fought for PFL some showcase fights last year, and this year he joined the featherweight season. He won his first fight, and yeah, he's another star that we have. So I definitely can see that what we're creating is developing this fan base in Saudi Arabia. And I think in the Middle East, especially because we, if you look at our roster, I'm very proud to see that the work that we did to scout talent, we were able to bring many champions of current and former champions of the major organizations, and also the biggest and the best prospects in the region. So I can say that there is a buzz in the Middle East. People are watching, and it's I think there is an anticipation for each fight card because because of the such high level the fights are.
And I mean, that kind of leads into what I wanted to ask you next, which is, is Saudi Arabia undeniably becoming the sort of future fight capital of the world? We've had Las Vegas be the fight capital for so long, but it seems like in Saudi Arabia, we're getting these big fights we want to see. We're getting big fight cards, big shows, all the stars showing out. So do you think that Saudi Arabia is the future fight capital of the world? And do you think there are other sort of epicenters for combat sports around the world that are emerging and, going to start putting on big fights?
Right. I think MMA is, along with soccer or football, I don't know how you guys call it in Australia.
Yeah, football.
Football, right? It's the most global sport in the world, so it's undeniable. But Saudi Arabia, obviously, they have been making strong moves to bring sports in the region. We have not only combat sports, we have Cristiano Ronaldo playing in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, the biggest boxing matches are being hosted in Saudi Arabia. We have PFL now starting this league in partnership with Surge, who is enabling us and empowering us, and and other organizations. UFC is going to do an event there as well. So definitely is becoming an epicenter for mixed martial arts. There are events as well hosted in Abu Dhabi, obviously. I think the whole region is very excited for combat sports. But I can see that Riyadh is going a little bit beyond and just bringing all these events, and it's interesting what's happening there. It's actually, for me, it's it's an honor to be part of that.
Absolutely. One thing, Gustavo, that I've sort of take notice of is that you are a matchmaker that is also trained in mixed martial arts, and it's quite rare that we see that nowadays. There's a lot of matchmakers around the world and in many different organizations, but a lot of them aren't trained in the sport, and like yourself. And I guess for the fans that maybe don't know you, this is a good introduction for them to you and what you're going to do for the sport. So I guess, how did you become involved in the sport? Was it early on? When did you sort of grasp the mixed martial arts bug, if you will?
That's an interesting question. I think the start was, so I started judo when I was probably, I don't know, 6 years old. I still have the certificate, but I was young. But I think what triggered me to start loving mixed martial arts was that every weekend at home, the biggest memory I have is to sit down during the whole weekend watching Bruce Lee movies with my father. So I think that's what started my passion for combat sports. And then I trained judo when I was really young. I think karate as well. I stopped for some time to focus on music. They put me in a music school, piano classes. Then I got obsessed with music. I left combat sports for a few years. But then when I was probably around 18 or 19, then I got back training jiu-jitsu. Then, same story as most people who train jiu-jitsu. I got totally addicted, and I never stopped. So I've been training for quite a long time. I'm a brown belt now, but I've been training for probably 16 to 17 years. Maybe. So I've been changing, obviously moving to different countries,
changing gyms, systems,
gyms, etc. But I've been training for a long time, and I train here in Bali. I started training striking as well. So I try to train boxing and Muay Thai and MMA. So I'm just, yeah, I love combat sports. So anytime free time that I have, instead of lifting weights, I prefer to train in any combat sports.
Definitely. I'm curious to know, Gus, how do you sort of manage the line between making fights that make sense and fights that make dollars? So, sort of what I mean by that is sometimes the fight that makes the most sense because of rankings or who's beaten who maybe isn't the fight that the fans want to see the most or are going to pay the most money for. So, as a matchmaker, how do you sort of manage that line between making fights that make sense from like a meritocracy standpoint, like someone's earned that fight, versus making fights that fans want to see that are going to bring the most eyeballs, get the most amount of money?
Right. I think what is interesting about PFL is that actually there is not much matchmaking. So obviously so what we do is we sign the athletes into the league. So we have, for PFL MENA, we have 4 weight classes. So we have bantamweight, featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight. So 4 weight classes, 8 fighters per weight class, so 32 fighters in total. We do have a couple of showcase fights, but the core of PFL MENA is the league, the season, right? So what we do is to build those divisions in a way that the fighters are within a certain level that so there is not like a big mismatch, if you will. So if you look at, for example, a good example was the previous event, PFL MENA 1. We had the bantamweight division where most of the fighters were veterans or current or former champions of UAE Warriors, Brave, and all these other organizations, Desert Force. And the featherweight division, we have the best prospects in the region. 4 of them are, I think, 4 fighters are undefeated. We have Abdullah Katani. We have, prospects. So there is not really much matchmaking. We make the first matchups that we think make sense in terms of stylistically and in the same level where they are well-balanced matchups. But then at the end, the fighters are going to tell their stories. We don't get involved in matchmaking anymore. So it's already very driven by meritocracy. In other events with different formats, like the standard boxing format, the other organizations, then there is more what you're talking about, which is this matchmaking, creating new contenders, and what fight will sell more. With PFL, at the end, the fighters are gonna, decide who is moving forward to the next phase. So there is not much of matchmaking. It's more about scouting, building the divisions, and then it's the fights are going to tell their own stories. So it works a little bit different.
Absolutely. Gustavo, a couple of last questions from us, man. I guess the hotbed here in Australia has always been very good, and I think it's getting increasingly a lot better. The amount of people we've had go to professional promotions. Obviously, Chelsea Hackett competes 2 days from now against Dakota Zacheva. She's a hometown girl as well. And then we've also got Josh Togo, who is an Australian featuring on the PFL MENA card, which is very cool for us. He's a Lebanese background as well. What do you know about Josh, and how excited are you for him to compete in that lightweight tournament?
Right. So obviously I watch all the, I try to watch as many events as possible. And obviously I follow UAE Warriors. And I know Josh Togo from fighting in UAE Warriors. He is actually, he's the current welterweight champion of UAE Warriors International. So UAE Warriors has 2, they have the Arab belts and the international belts. And he's the current welterweight champion. So I obviously remember watching him. He hasn't fought that often in the Middle East. He is more active in the circuit, but I knew of him. And then when I was doing my scouting, then I was just in doubt if he could fight lightweight, because I remembered of him fighting in welterweight. And then after I spoke to him and his manager, he said, no, that was a short notice fight. And he was, his weight class is still lightweight. So it made totally sense. Obviously, you know, he's a champion, very decorated champion of Eternal, if I'm not mistaken, UFN in Australia as well. He's currently ranked the #1 lightweight in Australia. So yeah, it's great to have him in the roster, and he's a very good striker, and he's going against a very decorated striker in his matchup against Mohsen from Iran. Who, even though his MMA record is not that, it doesn't look like he has that much experience. If you look at the amount of medals and championships he has in Wushu Sanda, like if I'm not mistaken now, I think 5 times Wushu Sanda world champion, Asian Games champion, 3 times World Cup champion. So Mohsen is a decorated striker in his own right. Obviously, Josh Togo has more experience in MMA, so it's a very interesting matchup.
Last question from us today, man. You know, I'm curious, what do you think is the biggest issue facing combat sports today? Whether it's the media coverage of the sport, whether it's fan acceptance of the sport, whether it's, you know, maybe the fighters trying to pick and choose matchups. But from your perspective, what's the biggest issue in combat sports today?
I don't think I don't think in terms of what are the issues per se. I think what happens is there are too many things you know, to grab your attention, right? So you know, what you're going to do on a Saturday night? You're going to a concert, you're going to shopping, or you're gonna stay watching MMA. I think what happens with combat sports is once you get involved, once you watch the first show, or first time you train and you get to know the sport, then you start understanding it, and then you love it. That becomes your life, right? So I think in terms of for the growth of the sport, you know, each region it takes time, but I would say for it to continue to grow, we need to create new stars that connect with the fan base, especially the younger fan base who are doing all this stuff, you know, on their phones that I cannot even follow or what. But and you know, like we did like this project with Hatan. She's an amateur fighter who we brought to fight, you know, in the big stage with the professionals, and the impact that it had in the region. You know, it was something incredible. So I think in the perspective of the growth of the sport is to find these you know, the athletes and how to connect them with the fans. So that's you know, that's one of the goals that we have and that we've been executing.
For sure. Gustavo, I want to say both from Josh and myself, a big thank you for joining us today, man. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on to talk all about the PFL and PFL MENA, which again is a huge move for combat sports. And I know both Josh and myself and combat sports fans around the world will be tuning in for that. Gustavo, all the best, my friend. Thank you very much for joining us again today.
Thanks for your time, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, man.